This is the Contractors Corner podcast series from Solar Power World. Welcome to another edition of Contractors Corner. I'm Solar Power World Editor-in-Chief Kelly Pickerel, and today I'm talking with Daren Goldin. He is CEO and co-founder of Florida-based installer Goldin Solar. So nice to talk with you today, Daren.
Thanks so much, Kelly. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
All right, so first, this is something we obviously have to talk about, but how are things going right now with the coronavirus pandemic? I know Florida itself is seeing a spike in cases, so how is Goldin Solar working as a company right now?
Yeah, so Florida right now has been particularly bad. I mean, especially Miami. I think they're calling it the new epicenter. Generally speaking, for us, for Goldin Solar, we've definitely had our ups and downs from a COVID. But knock on wood, I think we've been pretty fortunate to be able to, kind of just keep coasting in light of everything that's happening. And that's in part because of some of our strategy to switch over to doing commercial, to doing large residential, doing a lot of battery backup. But we've been okay. I mean, and I think we can talk about some of these items later in the podcast.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. So how is COVID affecting business? Have you seen customers delaying, pulling the trigger on projects?
So, it's interesting. We've seen it affecting us in so many different ways. So one of the things that happened really early on, and this is kind of in parallel to the general nation's mindset of it going from this isn't so serious to this is very serious to, this is very, very serious. I do a lot of sales consultations myself just because it's fun for me to get out there and meet our customers. And I remember one day I had a sales consultation scheduled for someone that was really interested in solar, and the guy's a doctor. And so I called him the day of, well, actually when we first booked it, so this was probably back in February, so maybe the early days of the pandemic. And I said to him, look, we can do a virtual consultation or an in-person consultation. It's whatever you're comfortable with. And he said, no, it's fine. Let's do it in person. I'm a doctor. Trust me. I don't think it's as bad as the media is making out to be. And then, a little while after that, the day of our appointment, I called him and I said, just want to confirm, we're meeting. And he said, no, we can't come anywhere near each other. We have to cancel that. And it's the same guy that said, no, it's fine. So, I asked him, you want to do a Zoom meeting? You want to do something remote? And he said, I'm really just not comfortable, getting a transaction like that kind of, price tag of like a regular residential solar system without having that person-to-person interaction, without being able to sit across the table and, look a person in the eyes and ask them a bunch of technical questions. And that's when it dawned on me that we're going to have to do, a real shift in our strategy. And so so we did. I mean, we shifted to Zoom meetings for our consultations. We still do some in person, if a customer's request, and if we do, then we have masks and keep our distance. But not only that, we also shifted, in terms of our products. So we used to probably do more residential rooftop solar systems, just standalone PV systems, than anything else. And now we're doing more and more residential PV systems and battery backup as one contract, and battery backup as an addition to folks that have already a PV system.
Why do you think is storage just more attractive in these times, that's kind of become more popular?
So it's really interesting. I think it really comes down to being in Florida, or in South Florida in particular. So the pitch for storage has always been a strong one in Miami. During Hurricane Irma, which was just 3 years ago, that was a really serious hurricane, and most people in South Florida lost power for 1, 2, or even 3 weeks. And so since then, last year we had Hurricane Dorian, which was just as bad, but fortunately it didn't hit Florida, but it definitely ravaged the Bahamas. And so Floridians are really aware of hurricanes and the possibility for power outages, and so that kind of pushes Floridians more in the direction of getting battery backup. And the interesting thing to me here is every Floridian has lived through hurricanes. Every Floridian has a game plan. What am I going to do if a big bad hurricane comes our way? And normally that game plan is something like, all right, well, if we lose power, we're going to pack up the family in the car and we're going to drive to, a couple cities, north and stay in a hotel for a week or two and ride out the power outage and come back. If that's a Floridian's normal plan when there's a hurricane, now when there's a hurricane and a pandemic, to me that totally changes. And when you think about what we've been doing since March, really the mantra has been shelter in place, stay home, stay safe. Your home is your fortress. Everybody hunker down at home with the family and let's just minimize our social interaction and practice social distancing. And so when you think about that with what do I do if the power gets knocked out in my house? And by the way, for a couple of months here, Miami had just shut down hotels. It really starts to increase the appeal factor of having battery backup. It makes it less about convenience and comfort and more about just fundamental survival. Because you think about the hurricane, the Katrina, right, the really bad one in Louisiana. People huddled into sports stadiums.
Right.
To find shelter. So that's the last thing you want to do in a pandemic. So we've really been very successful selling a lot of batteries to help people stay safe, stay home during a pandemic and during a hurricane season.
Yeah, that's really interesting. You said you've kind of shifted to more of the storage aspect, but what were you doing before? Were you doing primarily residential solar installations, and now are you taking on a little bit more commercial just to kind of do bigger projects?
Yeah, so we've been in business since 2014, and we started out always doing a blend of residential and commercial, where probably the majority of our work is residential. And it's always been large residential systems, just because the Florida energy appetite is pretty high. So it's usually 10 kilowatt, 15, 20, 30 kilowatt systems. On the residential side, commercial, it can go up to 100 or 200 kilowatts. For the first maybe 3.5 years that we were in business, we'd done a handful of battery backup systems. We've done some Solar Edge with LG Chem. We've done, some Outback, some of the more traditional battery systems. But it's really interesting in Florida because maybe in other states, you wouldn't necessarily consider an air conditioner as a critical load. Even in Arizona, as hot as it gets, at night, it's nice and cool. So at night, you can open up the windows and enjoy that coolness because it's dry. They don't have the humidity that we have down here. And so one thing that we learned in our first 3 or 4 years in business is if you can't get your air conditioner to be backed up in a power outage, then you might as well not do it. People are not interested in just backing up lights and power outlets. So we weren't pushing battery backed up systems for a long time, and then about 1.5 years ago we became Tesla Powerwall certified. And the genius thing about the Powerwall is that it's an AC coupled battery. You can parallel the batteries, and now not only are you adding up the kilowatt hours of the stored energy, you're also adding up the amps, the current that you can deliver. And so now you put two Powerwalls in parallel, and now you have 60 amps, which is enough to back up your air conditioner. And so for us, that one change, becoming Tesla Powerwall certified, was enough to really, that was, crossing that threshold to say, now this is really something that is valuable and useful to Floridians. And so, last year we sold a lot of Powerwalls, but this year that just became a major part of our offering. And what was interesting to me is that I always considered solar as the no-brainer, low-hanging fruit, sell, because it pays for itself and because it's just obviously you're making a monthly payment to utility. You might as well make a monthly payment to a finance company to slowly, build equity and own your system, or buy it outright and make your money back in, 6 or 7 years. To me, solar was always the no-brainer, and the battery backup was really the luxury product, because you're not displacing another expense, but you're buying the peace of mind to know that you have power in the event of an outage. And now in the pandemic, to me, that kind of switched. And the reason is, folks, to go solar, to commit to a 20-year loan, which is, the most common term, there's just too much uncertainty. People don't know if they're going to have their job in a couple of months. They don't know if they're going to be able to, afford their mortgage. And so we've seen it to become much more difficult for people to commit to a 20-year solar loan. But for those people that already have solar, it seemed like a much more immediate and appealing, decision to buy a battery backup.
Yeah, I mean, for the last few years, you're right. Like, we've always been saying that the storage part is kind of harder to sell because it is that luxury item. And I guess who would have thought a pandemic would kind of be the springboard for the storage industry?
Totally. And, to me, the sales pitch is, if you already have the solar, you're halfway there to having, battery backup. So now you just have to add the batteries. I like to say, if we compare it to a generator, it's like you already have the fuel. Mm-hmm. Now you just need that thing that makes you be able to use the fuel in an outage, because it's kind of like tapping into an extra feature of the solar system that you already have. Because without the battery backup, it's just going to shut off when the grid is down. But with the battery backup, you can now use it in an outage.
Right. Yeah. You said Goldin Solar started in 2014. So tell me about that. How did you get started? Why did you want to get into the solar industry?
So, yeah, I've kind of looked back and into this process and how I got here. I started out in structural engineering for my undergrad, and I just enjoyed problem solving. And so that's what pulled me in engineering. And I remember learning about U.S. Green Building Council and LEED building certification. And then it kind of dawned on me that building's not just building. We can build to offset our carbon footprint, or we can continue business as usual. And, ever since then, I just wanted to live with, intention, with a purpose, do things to better the world. And so I got my master's in construction management, which is still in civil, but kind of the other side of the coin of structural, because I wanted to get more involved in other projects, participants, get involved with the owner and the architect, and manage subcontractors. And so I worked after grad school as a project manager, superintendent, building schools, auditoriums, homes, college buildings, commercial interior build outs. And I'm always looking to say, how can I do green? How can I get into that space? I really want to build, LEED certified buildings. Back in 2013, I had the privilege of getting hired as an assistant project manager for a utility scale solar farm for Apple. So I was working for a company called Moss and Associates, who had a contract with SunPower, who had a contract with Apple. And it was a 20 megawatt solar farm, single axis tracker, something like 57,600 solar panels tracking the sun, throughout the day from east to west. And this was essentially to power, the iCloud. So Apple had their servers in, or still does have their servers in North Carolina. I think the town is Maiden. And so we built a solar farm really close in Conover, North Carolina. And that's when the light bulb went off. It clicked to me. I said, I love solar. This is super rewarding. This is really interesting. And it also dawned on me that this is probably also the future. And so I did some soul searching, and I said, how can I, make this make sense for me in my world? And one of the things that dawned on me was the life of a person building solar farms, while very, honorable, isn't necessarily a fun one, because you're living in a place that land is abundant. So you're not living in a big city. You're living somewhere pretty remote. You're going to be there for 6 months, let's say, and then you're going to go on to the next solar farm, which could be in another state or another country.
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like lightning doesn't strike in the same place twice. Once you build a solar farm, the next one's not going to be anywhere near there. So that's
Yeah.
yeah, it's a nomadic life. It's a tough life. So I said I want to. So I was living in Miami before I took that job, and then when I finished the solar farm, I moved back to Miami, and I said I want to do rooftop solar. I want to bring this to day-to-day users, and that's how I decided to start Goldin Solar. And one of the funny things is back then, I just looked into the economics. I just said, if there's a model where people can put solar panels on their house and it pays for itself with energy savings, then that should be a no-brainer. And so it should just be able to take off like a wildfire. So I did my research. I learned that there was a federal tax credit of 30%. I learned that there was a $2 per watt rebate from Florida Power and Light back then, and that the average price for rooftop solar in 2013 is sold at around $4 a watt. So I did the math and I said, all right, so half of that is paid by the power utility, another 30% of what's left is paid by the federal government as a tax credit. So it seems like these things are just about given away. And I did the math, how much energy does a solar system produce relative to what it costs, and it just seemed to me like, wow, people are going to make their money back in 3 years. So I created, so I started Goldin Solar, and then since then that $2 a watt rebate turned out to be a lottery, kind of like a first come first serve, disappears in 15 minutes thing. But the funny thing is that the models based on which I decided to start Goldin Solar didn't necessarily pan out to be something I could rely on, but this industry is so all over the place that it did end up being a good decision after all.
Right. Yeah, there are a lot of those lottery type rebates going on. But specifically with Florida Power and Light, I mean, they do seem to be fairly pro-solar in a way. I mean, they are doing a lot of bigger projects themselves. So how would you describe your relationship with that local utility?
So we're actually really close to Florida Power and Light, and really I take my hat off to them because they're actually outstanding in my book. They probably have more solar as part of their energy production portfolio than anybody else. They've really been a pleasure to work with as far as getting our customers set up with net metering. They're very fast. They're very responsive. Usually we get the net meters installed for our customers by FPL in 3-4 days after the the permit's closed and the net meter is applied for. I know other utilities can take a month or two. So FPL's really been a pleasure to work with for us, and they have a lot of cool interesting projects. I mean, they do a lot of solar trees, which are sort of Lumos systems, and they put them in parks where people can see solar. There's solar carports, canopies. They did a huge job at Florida International University, right outside of the engineering college, a massive solar carport. So it's fun to see because they're very active. So they're building their own solar farms as their own assets, but they're also building things that people can see in parks and buildings just to make solar front and center. And they're very supportive of contractors.
Mm-hmm. That is great to hear because that isn't very repeated across the country. So to have that support is great. You mentioned that you're a Tesla Powerwall dealer, and you're also very vocal about using Solar Edge inverters. So is sticking to the same brand of products across the board important to the company?
That's a great question. There's something to be said for brand loyalty, but there's also something to be said for always going with the best product. And so, one of the things that we really explain about Goldin Solar that makes us very unique is that we're a company that is owned and run by engineers. So my background is structural engineering, construction project management, and my business partner, Joe Cataldo, is an electrical engineer by training. He went to University of Florida for his electrical engineering, and he studied microelectronics. And so we didn't pick products sort of randomly. I mean, we spend hours sometimes on the phone debating about the merits of this panel versus that panel, or this inverter versus that inverter, or digging into all the different battery options. When we're walking the floor of SPI, looking at different products, I mean, we're asking very particular questions from the reps they're representing. We started with Solar Edge, and we're still with Solar Edge today. We've got maybe 11 or 1,200 systems installed throughout Florida with Solar Edge. They've been very, very supportive, but to this day, I stand by the statement that I believe that it's the most efficient inverter on the market. It's provided our customers to have individual panel level monitoring and optimization, which helps our customers, really capitalize on that very good panel warranty, right? Because you can't really use a panel warranty if you don't know how the individual panels are doing, if you only have system level data. And I'd really say the same for Powerwalls. It's just been such a game-changing product. I mean, I mentioned this earlier. Maybe in a lot of states, people are content with a 25 amp backup panel where they can back up all their lights and a couple of outlets, and maybe that can be comfortable enough to live in to pass a couple of days. But in Florida, if you're not backing up the air conditioner, then people don't want to hear it. The air conditioner is 100% an essential load, and because we can use Powerwalls, number one, we can add it as a retrofit to all of our other existing systems because it connects on the AC side, and number two, we can connect them in parallel and actually have enough amps to back up an entire house, and that's really been the game changer for us there.
Yeah. I see you guys are like active on social media, and you're doing a lot of videos, and you recently started a Fridays with Daren webinar and video series that kind of go over some Solar 101 topics. So what do these videos and other media types allow you to do? Are you reaching a larger customer audience with these?
I think that every sort of thing that we're doing kind of has a different objective. We actually first got started with making videos about a year, maybe a year and a half ago, when we created a YouTube channel called The Green Stuff. And to me, this is us just going back to our original ideals, our original values, the things that we were originally really excited about when we started the company. And that was sustainability and, the living green movement. And so what we did by creating the Green Stuff YouTube show was meet other people in the local community and showcase some of the cool sustainable things that they're doing. So I did a tour around my house and showed all the various green features. We did an episode with somebody that is a professional living wall installer. We visited a sustainable community and got to showcase that. So that was nice. I think the objective there is, really showing what the brand is about and helping connect our audience with other people that are doing really cool things. The other, YouTube show that you had mentioned, Fridays with Daren, that's something that we started I want to say in March, in response to COVID, in response to everybody staying home. And here the thought process was, if everybody's stuck at home, if people are really scared to pull the trigger on an expensive solar installation, at least we can connect with them. At least we can start building a relationship and conveying our expertise and our information that we have to communicate with the world, and people can watch these at their convenience. One of the things that was really true for us when we started the business was that selling solar was in great part about education, because the average Floridian didn't know anything about solar in 2014. A typical sales consultation would start with something like, so these are going to heat my swimming pool, right? And we'd have to take 10 steps back and say, no, that's solar thermal. We're doing solar photovoltaics. We're going to convert sunlight into electricity. So really education was always a big part of what we did. And we figured we're going to make the Fridays with Daren session about education. We did a session going really deep into racking and explaining, why solar racking is different and what considerations are important for Florida. We dived deep into, inverters. We dived deep into panels. And I think that's been fun. It's been a lot of fun, and we've gotten some good feedback on that show.
Yeah. Removing COVID from the equation, what is something that is preventing you from making Goldin Solar even larger? It doesn't seem like permitting is an issue in your area. What's kind of from holding you back a little bit?
Well, that's a good question. We started out growing at breakneck speed. We started out 5xing for the first like 3 or 4 years, and it was really kind of exponential. And I think one of the first things we realized is that we don't really want to be like bigger and bigger and bigger. That seemed pretty early on to not be our focus. I think that it was our focus early on, but then we realized that we didn't want that to be our focus. What we really cared about more than being big was being good. And so we wanted to give our customers the best possible value. And so we see, the nationwide companies that are just so big that they don't have that same ability to make sure that the customers have that QA, QC install, high quality workmanship install with a high quality, customer service interactions with their project manager as the project gets delivered. It probably is related to being in the Florida market because we have 60 different building departments just between Dade and Broward County. And I want to say there's about 300 building departments in Florida, and every inspector and reviewer has their own ideas of how things should be. So it's always taken a lot of personalized attention from Joe and myself to get plans across permitting and inspections. I think it really just came down to saying we want to be really good rather than being really big. And we actually decided to kind of shrink our size a little bit just to make sure that we never lost that personal touch that we have on our projects. And one of the things that I talk to our customers about is what's the sweet spot in terms of company size for the customer to make sure that they have the best experience that they can. And I say that knowing that at the smallest size, there's a company that's basically one guy with his van and a team, and the same person selling the jobs is engineering the jobs and getting the team started, which, by the way, was us in 2014. And then on the the largest end of that, you've got the national companies that are basically in every single state, and there's certainly merits to that. But I like to tell customers, in my opinion, the sweet spot is a company that's big enough to have relationships with manufacturers directly. So we were able to save our customers money by cutting out distributors and do our own distribution. We have our own warehouse. We have our own box trucks. Everybody's 100% W-2 employees. We have our own engineering in-house. So we're big enough that we don't have to outsource anything, and we're small enough that somebody could look up Goldin Solar on Google and find my cell phone and give me a call. And if they ever have any issues, know that they can, quote unquote, talk to the manager and get their issues solved. So we're small enough to really make sure that we have everybody's issues solved, and we're big enough to tap into those same economy of scale savings for our customers.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Yeah, you have that like personal touch that I'm sure a lot of customers really enjoy that.
Yeah. And, and we love Florida, and, as long as we can stay in Florida, we can really know our market very, very well, know the specific conditions that Florida requires for systems such as our higher wind speeds and our specific, building codes. So I think that's one of the things that's always been pretty special about us, that we're local and that we understand our codes very, very, very well.
Mm-hmm. Well, how likely do you think the ITC, the tax credit, is going to be extended? And is the ITC an important selling point still for Goldin Solar?
That's a great question. I think that it is likely to be extended, depending on how the election goes. I think that's probably what it comes down to. I'll tell you this. We definitely hurt in sales in January.
After that first step down?
That's it. So the idea was November and December and October sales were really, really going well. And it made sense to me because anybody that had been considering solar, anybody that was really serious about going solar, that's probably the first thing that any company told them is make sure that you get this system in before the end of the year so that you can capitalize on the full tax credit. And then in January, basically, there was a significant drop in sales because anybody that was serious had already signed up in the months before. Or if they had just started their journey, into learning, and seeing if solar was good for them, then they'd learn that there's a 26% tax credit, and it's going to be the same all the way through the end of the year. So all of a sudden, that time sensitivity went away, and then on top of that, power bills are just generally low in December in Florida, right? Most of our bill is the air conditioner, which makes the bills really high in the summer, really low in the winter. And so when you had both of those two things combined, low bills and the low priority of a tax credit that had just dropped, sales were hurting. Now sales are looking really good because of the pandemic and because of people really signing up for the tax credit. For Powerwalls. But what I'm foreseeing, in the last 4 or 5 months of the year is the same thing that we saw last year, because of the uncertainty, because of for all we know, next year it's going down to 22%, and after that it's gone forever. I think customers certainly should sign up this year if they want to do solar, to make sure that they can get the most that they can out of the tax credit.
Right.
And all we can do is hope that it gets extended.
Yeah. Yeah, we will definitely have to see how this election pans out. And yeah, see if there's some spending with the coronavirus bill and everything to kind of help us out. So it'll be interesting next few months, that's for sure.
I like to think that where there's a will, there's a way. And I like to think that more and more Americans are waking up to the fact that renewable energy is our inevitable future. It is going to benefit the country in every way imaginable, fighting climate change, creating jobs, increasing our national security by reducing our reliance on foreign energy sources. I mean, we have every reason to go solar and to invest in solar farms and rooftop solar and wind. So I'm hoping that we wake up and see that and do the right thing and rebuild our infrastructure and rebuild our economy with renewable energy.
Yeah. Well, where do you want to see Goldin Solar in the next few years? What do you hope to accomplish?
So what we want to do is just never compromise on the quality. We're very well received. We've got great reviews online, and that's because we fundamentally care about the customer and we fundamentally care about the product. So we want to make sure that we always prioritize that over growth. I think depending on how, the tax credit goes, we'll either continue to grow in Florida and who knows, maybe grow out of Florida. But if solar continues to be difficult, or if the tax credit doesn't get extended, we might do some pivoting and get into home building. We're going to continue to offer general electrical services, battery backup, car chargers. We can wire a house. So with our licenses right now, we have a solar, electrical, and roofing license. So depending on how the tax credit goes, we'll either go all in and just hone in on solar, or we'll start looking on some parallel spaces to get into and grow horizontally.
Do you think storage might kind of overtake your solar business possibly?
Well, most of our momentum with storage is or I should say storage only, if we're signing a new battery only contract, is our previous customers,
right, that
originally just got solar. In fact, we're getting a lot of customers that got solar from other companies that are now coming back to us for storage. I don't think storage will ever outpace solar, because you definitely want to have solar and storage. You don't really want to have storage by itself. I mean, maybe for other states, but Florida, it's about knowing that you can survive for multiple days when a hurricane takes out the grid. So I see both always being a very important part of our business.
Really interesting. Thanks so much for talking with me. I mean, I learned a lot about the company. Thanks so much.
My pleasure. Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
This has been another edition of Contractors Corner. Join us each month as editor Kelly Pickerel chats with solar installers across the country. Thanks for listening to the Solar Power World podcast. Visit us online to hear more great podcasts, view industry videos, and read our great editorial content. SolarPowerWorldOnline.com. See you back here next month.